Right. Good afternoon, everyone. If it's anything like the weather here in Sacramento, it's a little bit of a gloomy, overcast day. So we're here to help you shake those blues off, shake that afternoon gloom off. And we hope you are excited to be with us here today for our third system-wide webinar of Undocumented Student Action Week here in the California Community Colleges. My name is David O'Brien. I have the privilege of serving as Vice Chancellor for Government Relations here at the Community College's Chancellor's Office. I'm filling in for our Chancellor, Dr. Daisy Gonzalez today, and we are so pleased you're all here, but we need to ask you one quick favor before we get started, which is if you have colleagues or friends who would benefit from or enjoy or grow from this webinar, and we know you would. We know we all have them. Send out a tweet, send out a text, email them, chat them, encourage them to join you. We have a very exciting lineup of speakers here today. If this is your first time tuning in, the Chancellor's Office is hosting daily webinars at 1 p.m. this week, all throughout the week, to highlight critical policy frameworks and tools designed to support institutions with successful implementation of undocumented student policy reforms and initiatives. The idea here, the theme of this year's Undocumented Student Action Week is change in action. We want support for and equity for our undocumented students to be something that happens 52 weeks out of the year, 365 days out of the year, 366 in leap years, not something that just happens once a week. But we are fortunate to be able to highlight it for this 1 week out of the year. So I want to thank all of our invited guests from colleges up and down the state who have shared how they're designing high impact practices to support student success. Yesterday, we provided an overview of how to design programs and services with equity in mind, intentional design for student success. And today, we're going to hear from two of our campus colleagues on how they've implemented innovative and evidence-based practices when allocating funds to support undocumented student success. In the last 5 years alone, the collective budget and legislative advocacy of the California Community Colleges has led to the creation of the Student Success and Achievement Program, funding for Dream Resource Centers and undocumented and undocumented liaisons, and the Federal Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund through the CARES Act and subsequent COVID Recovery Acts. All of these investments are tools that can be equitably distributed to build a culture that provides safe and welcoming learning environments for all students. Today's webinar will feature one of the biggest champions for undocumented students and undocumented Californians we are privileged to have in elective office, State Senator Monique Limon of the 19th Senate District, practitioners from Mount San Antonio College and El Camino College, as well as the president of Foothill College, and Leonardo Rodriguez, who is a current Mendocino Community College student and student trustee on our statewide Community College Trustees Board. I want to thank all of our speakers for being here and leading today's discussion about how they leverage these dollars to support undocumented students in their goal of earning a college education. I want to remind everybody to please use the Q&A function in Zoom if you have any questions. Our team and our speakers will be monitoring it in order to respond. And now I am so pleased, that's enough for me, to introduce Leonardo Rodriguez, as I mentioned, a student at Mendocino Community College and a first-generation college student and DACA recipient who has benefited directly from the policies we will discuss today. And as you hear from Leonardo, I want you to think about the role that you play in your institution or community, and to think of one thing that you're going to commit to doing, or one new thing or thing you'll do different moving forward to help support undocumented students in the California community colleges. The success of our students is contingent on everyone at every level participating and engaging with this work, and that means all of us. And that often requires critical reflection and a theme that we discuss a lot in the California Community College, which is moving outside of our comfort zone. All right, with that in mind, thank you all again for being here, and please join me in a virtual welcome. I will turn it over to Leonardo Rodriguez.
Thank you, David. And, you know, this week is a reminder to us all that the immigration system in our country continues to fail those who seek the American dream. But it is also a reminder that we have the ability to help keep the dreams of many undocumented students alive. When I was 5 years old, my mother and I crossed the southern border. Through barriers, bloody knees, and deserts, we seek to be reunited with my father. My parents had made the ultimate sacrifice for their son to have a chance to live in a better world. What they would find is a world of inequality, filling our lives with poverty. Yet they continue to tell me to chase my dreams, even if this country would reject me and cast me out. And this is a reality I faced after high school, after being persecuted and filled with fear by a xenophobic administration. I graduated with a 2.4 GPA spring of 2019. My only choice was to attend a community college. In the fall of 2019, I enrolled at Mendocino College and joined the first-year institute program. I was doing better than I was in high school, but the pandemic shattered this new reality, leading me to drop 2 semesters of college. It was frustrating to know my parents had given me the world, yet I could not build on it. In the fall of 2020, I was diagnosed with ADHD and started receiving treatment. By spring of the year 2021, I ended the semester with a 3.8 GPA and my election as student trustee for Mendocino College. In August of this year, I was elected by fellow student trustees to serve on the California Community College Trustee Board, becoming the first DACA recipient and the first from Mendocino Lake Community College District to hold this position. I'm immensely proud to be the first, but I hope to carve a path for students whose voices aren't heard so that I won't be the last. A key factor in my success is how much family, peers, and my college have invested in me. My college experience at our Dream Center connected me to mentors and counselors who looked like me, as well as with peers who had similar stories. And often I am told I am anomaly who is ahead of the curve. And to an extent, this is true. I connected with the right people at the right time, a privilege many do not have access to. But this is why we must be creative with how we support undocumented students who not only face dangers of deportation, but a lack of financial support in a society that sees us as criminals, when in reality, we are the living, breathing embodiments of the American dream. Because of leaders like Senator Monique Limon and legislation like AB 540, students like myself are allowed to build on the world our parents gave us with support of financial aid. However, we need more support in the form of direct financial aid, training for counselors to understand and adequately aid us, improvements in early identification of at-risk students, especially undocumented students like myself, and giving us opportunities to be leaders. I'm here not because I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, but because of individuals who found ways to aid me and chose to believe in me. I believe in my fellow undocumented peers, and I reaffirm that we are the American dream, a key to our future. Let us use creativity to keep this dream alive and keep the doors of opportunities open. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo. We're so excited to have heard your remarks, to hear your story, and thank you for sharing it with us today. Good afternoon, everyone. What a great way to kick off this webinar than by having our student leader, Leonardo, with an amazing story, with a passion for this work, kick us off. And I want to really reflect and highlight one of the things that he said, which was, I want to make sure I'm not the last to get these resources or to get the support. And that's what we're here to do today. We are here to make sure that you're not the last, that you're one of many more to come, many more students that we support across our system. And so we today are going to have a great conversation on innovative uses of undocumented student funds, how you can support your dreamers on your campuses, those that come to our great system with a dream and a hope. And it is our role and responsibility and privilege to be able to help them along their journey. And so I'm very excited to help moderate today's session. I want to kick us off since we have a stellar lineup of speakers. You've already heard Leonardo. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to welcome back my colleague, David O'Brien. Sorry, we already welcomed David. So I want to welcome one of our great champions in the state of California. We're very fortunate to have great leaders in this state who believe in this mission, who believe not only in our colleges, but our role in serving undocumented students and supporting dreamers. And this work wouldn't be possible if we didn't have champions like Senator Monique Limon. Senator Monique Limon is the state senator for the 19th district. Her community represents Santa Barbara and parts of Ventura. And so, in those areas, there are many programs that are supporting our communities. That's not by accident. It happens because we have great leaders that encourage us, that support us, that have our back when we have these ideas that ensure that we are getting to all of our students who can serve and be supported, especially our undocumented students. So with that, I want to welcome Senator Monique Limon to our webinar today.
Thank you, Lizette, for that introduction, and thank you, Leonardo, for starting us off with your words about the importance of us, our state, really supporting all of our students, including our undocumented students. I have a background of working in higher education for 14 years prior to getting to the state legislature. And that background is what has inspired me to do some of the policy work that I do now. Thinking about all the students that I worked with, their pathways to earning a college degree, to gaining access to a college or university, or to pursuing a PhD have been elements that have been very real for me and that have been present in the legislation that I pass. And that's why some of the legislation that I passed has really been thoughtful and intentional in making sure that our undocumented student community in California has a pathway that leads to these goals, a pathway that is open, a pathway that also mirrors the pathways of other students in our state. And certainly that pathway and the policy that I've worked on has built on past legislative efforts by other members of the legislature and other colleagues. I'm very happy that this year our governor signed 7 bills with the goal of making college more affordable. We have heard time and time again from all of our students, but particularly our undocumented students that don't always qualify for the same aid as other traditional students do, that college affordability is fundamental to pursuing that college dream, the college degree. And we wanted to really focus on that. I'm happy that many members of the California Latino Legislative Caucus championed and authored some of these bills, including some reform bills related to the FAFSA. And I know we were successful on some, a little less successful on others, but we look forward to those bills moving forward. We want to make sure that the California Dream Act is something that our students know about, that our students apply for. And I think that the other piece is that as the state looks at the information of outreach of who our students are, we have an incredible program called CalSOAP here in California, which I used to work for before I was in the legislature, which does the job of making sure that our students have information about pursuing college. And we want to make sure that that also includes our undocumented students, our AB 540, our DACA students, all who are incredible members of our student community that we want to make sure that we're able to focus on as well. I think in previous years, and one that makes me so proud, we worked really hard to get the 2019 version of AB 540 out that was signed by the governor, a program that is now established in the state of California and that Leonardo mentioned that allows our students to have work experience that is similar to what other students have the opportunity to do, but a work experience that gives our students the ability to get a stipend for that experience. Every element that we do to make financial aid available to ensure that the pathway is open is an element that leads to more degrees by our own students here in California. And that's so important that when we talk about our AB 540 DACA undocumented students, those are our students here in California, the students that we absolutely embrace, and we want to make sure are part of our state and our community in the so many ways that they have been traditionally. You know, the other elements of what the California State Legislature looks at is how do we ensure that we are not just creating pathways to receive for our students to receive higher education degrees, but how are we also ensuring that our students have information about the program, services, and funding available? And so educating our students, I think, is very, very key, particularly early on. We want to make sure our students have the academic, the eligibility to get into colleges, but also know that the resources that currently exist to be able to get that college degree. I know that we have worked very hard to destigmatize the undocumented student status. That has been something that has been brought to our attention as state legislators as elements that are very important. So as much as we can do as state legislators to align our policies so that all students have equal access, equitable access to higher ed has been very important. So whether it's jobs, internships, scholarships, grants, eligibility for in-class enrollment, and class experience, academic experiences, all of those are elements that we continue to think about as we're moving policy legislation forward. And finally, one last element that I think is important to remember is that as much as our work is and will continue to be student-centered, we also know that we have to expand some of the work we do, ensuring that we're educating our staff, administrators, and faculty about how to support our undocumented DACA AB 540 students, about the resources that are available. We know that for students to be successful, the entire school university community needs to be part of the education and needs to be able to identify the resources available. There's not one single bill that solves for all of this. And I think that again, I bring my history of working with students in our community, my passion for seeing students achieve a higher education degree to my policy lens. And so some of the work that you've seen is really important to that. And part of this, it goes far beyond just counting the number of degrees that California students will earn. It has to do with what that degree means for our community. And the fact that we know that 1 in 4 DACA recipients live here in California. We know that over 75,000 undocumented students enroll in California public colleges and universities. And we also know that it's critical to our workforce. As we look at our workforce in the state of California, we know that, for example, there are almost 15,000 DACA recipients employed in roles such as cashiers, stalkers, laborers, supervisors, all within our, first responder kind of first defense line of defense, as we've learned. And I think that these are all very, very, very important, especially in a time like the last 18 months where we've been dealing with COVID. We're able to identify that approximately 29,000 healthcare workers are DACA recipients. We need our DACA undocumented AB 540 student population to be part of the California workforce, of the California economy that helps California thrive and that helps California in some of our most challenging moments. So thank you all for being part of this conversation. Thank you all for allowing me a space to share with you what the legislature is doing, why this is so important, not just for the earnings of a college degree, but for the health of really our state. It's critical that we do more, that we create these college pathways, and that we identify the ways that our students will be active members of our community contributing every day. Thank you all for this opportunity, and I am glad to be an ally and a partner in all of our efforts to pursue, for all of our students to pursue higher education. Thank you.
More than an ally, Senator Monique Limon has been a champion. Thank you so much for the policies you have led, for creating the statewide ethos that embraces our undocumented student community. Thank you for being here. We're very glad that you can share some of the policy efforts that you've led and those that you're championing with your colleagues. So again, appreciate all your efforts. So as you've heard, we have support from all levels to fully go all in supporting our undocumented community. And so what you'll hear next is campus leaders that are really innovating in this area, recognizing that every step of the way that we support our students from the first time they come to our campuses all the way through achieving that dream matters. So I'm excited to welcome next President Thuy Nguyen, President of Foothill College, a great champion, to share a few remarks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Navarrete, and Chancellor's office colleagues. Incredible remarks by State Senator Limon and Leonardo Rodriguez. Thank you so much for your words. You know, give me your tired, give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. These words engraved on the Statue of Liberty strike a profound chord. My family and I fled communist Vietnam when I was 3 years old. Our small, rickety fishing boat drifted in the Pacific Ocean for 20 days. We were tired, we were poor, we were homeless. The words engraved on the Statue of Liberty might as well be engraved on the doorsteps of every community college. At Foothill College, the Statue of Liberty, the Statue of Liberty lamp is imprinted in our Dreamers mural. You'll see this lamp right here. A mural made for and by undocumented students and allies. It was a mural that I commissioned as college president at Foothill on the day of the US presidential inauguration more than 4 years ago. We wanted to send a message to all the undocumented students and mixed status families that they are welcomed at Foothill College. This mural shows the dreams, and yet when you look at it, it tells the dreams of many students. At Foothill College, we are unapologetic in our effort to support undocumented students. When the federal government last year limited the support of COVID federal stimulus funds, then called CARES Fund, we created a fund through our foundation and with the incredible work of our financial aid office and our Family Engagement Institute. We called it Foothill Cares. As we message, if the feds don't care about you, Foothill cares about you. Besides thinking of ways to provide financial support and sending a welcoming message, we also need to remind the larger community of the racial diversity of undocumented students. For instance, 1/4 of undocumented students in higher education are Asian Pacific Islander descent. By telling my own personal refugee story, I also try to show the connection and my deep appreciation for undocumented students. It is part of the larger message that our colleges send, and that is we are a welcoming place for all. That is the message we are also working on to welcome Afghan refugees, to welcome students from underserved communities, and to welcome undocumented students. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the work each and every one of you do to support undocumented students. And for the undocumented students on this call, keep making progress toward your education. As the great Cesar Chavez once said, you cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. So keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, President Nguyen. Thank you for being unapologetic in all of your efforts. And thank you for sending symbols and for your actions that support our undocumented students. Having leadership from the top really send that message, build that ethos is the first step in ensuring that we can then invest and use the resources that are provided to our colleges from the state and federal government to support our undocumented students. So with that, we want to spend the next part of our webinar going through two great examples from two leading colleges that are supporting undocumented students, using their resources in a way that have long-term impacts in supporting the dreams of our students. So want to head on to the next slide and welcome our first update and presentation. Today we will welcome Mount San Antonio College, Mount SAC College, as we all call and know them, Dr. Eric Lara, who is the Associate Dean of Student Success and Equity, and Dario Fernandez, who is the Director of Dream Programs, both at Mount SAC, to share how they are using their resources to support undocumented students. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Navarrete. Welcome, everyone. My name is Eric Lara, Associate Dean of Equity here at Mount SAC. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So today, Dario and I are going to discuss the different types of funding that we've used at Mount SAC within our students, within our program, anywhere from general funds to SEEP funds, foundation dollars, and now the AB 1645 dollars. At Mount SAC, we have had a dream program, an actual center for 6 years now. In 2014, when we got the student equity allocation, and we read the contract, we read what was allowable, what was not allowable. Nowhere did it say that we could use the money on undocumented students, but it didn't say that we could not use the money on undocumented students. And years before, we had supported our students through the EOPS program with EOPS counselors. So as soon as this money came through, we knew right away that we were going to open a center. And within a year, not only did we open a center, but we hired a full-time coordinator. So this was a staff coordinator. And we brought over the counselor from EOPS, transitioned her over to be the full-time counselor for the DREAM program. Within the following 4 years, up until 2019, additional student equity funding was provided. It got rolled into SEEP funds as we all know it today. And with that, we started hiring student workers, we started hiring adjunct counselors, and we were allowed to have discretionary funds to support our students. We all know what happened in the election. And when that happened, our campus came together as a family. Faculty, foundation supported all of us. With that, we created a dream fund through the foundation office. Faculty and staff started donating money through payroll deduction, which they continue to do so till today. And we were part of the yearly foundation allocation. So we're also getting funding from them. But with DACA and the California DREAM Act, with the visibility of that on campus, talked about it a lot more, talked about the importance of it, started working closely with financial aid office. A lot more students started enrolling at Mount SAC. We have a large feeder district. We have over 50 high schools that feed into our district. So we have a large population of undocumented students that are coming in, both from the non-credit side and also from the credit side. With this, we've always received support from the Vice President of Student Services, from the President of the campus, and the funding continued to grow, but also the support both on and off campus continued to grow. In 2019, when SEEP really started becoming one pot of money, and we saw the need and the growth in our students, we had hired, by that point, a director for the program. So that is Dario now. He is the first official full-time director at Mount SAC for the DREAM program. We have hired a student equity, a program specialist for the DREAM program. We have just recently hired some social workers, which Dario will talk about in a few minutes. And then we also had hired legal services. So before the Immigration Legal Service Project came about from the Chancellor's office in the state, Mount SAC saw the need for this service. And we were provided money to be able to hire roughly 20 hours a month for a 2-year period, our own legal service team to support our undocumented students. I do want to talk a little bit about the breakdown of funds. So if we can go to the next slide. So as you can see here, we're utilizing money from all across campus. The majority of our money is coming from SEEP allocation. Then we're using AB 1645 funds, general funds, and then campus foundation. We are always asked, how are you allowed, or how did you, for many years now, how have you used SEEP funding to support your program, your students? At the end of the day, our students, our undocumented students, are Mount SAC students. They are students. Majority are Latinx, they're first generation, they're low income. So we don't distinguish between the two, right? They are a student just like everybody else. For the SEEP funds, we use that primarily on salary and benefits. So for our full-time director, full-time counselor, our adjunct, we do have 2 adjunct counselors for the DREAM program. And then we also have discretionary funds that we utilize within the SEEP budget. Our general funds are used, so this is the campus dollars, ongoing money, is used for our educational advisor, which we're in the process of hiring an educational advisor for the DREAM program, supporting the legal services, as I mentioned earlier, and also for student travel and conference. So we will take students to various conferences, to NCORE, to NASPA. We'll take them to university field trips across the state. So that money is coming from general funds. As I mentioned, Campus Foundation, they have created an emergency needs fund and a basic resource fund. Faculty and staff and the campus community, local community, have donated and continue to donate through payroll deduction. And then finally, Dario is going to go into specifics on the $1645 that we just received. With that, we are using it to hire, or we have hired a program specialist. We are creating internship programs for our students. We are paying for USCIS fees, hiring student workers, hourly assistants within the center. We just hired social workers, and we're going to be hiring mental health therapists as well to round out the entire holistic approach to our DREAM program and DREAM Center. With that, Dario will give you specifics on the personnel and the staffing and the budget within our program. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. And really, when we were putting this presentation together and we looked at that pie chart, the first thing that came to mind was really how we're diversifying the funding streams, right? To really invest into our undocumented students. And it was very clear that that strategy would be something that would be very impactful for other campuses to learn from. At Mount SAC, that institutional support and buy-in through the use of campus general funds and SEEP funds have really strengthened the infrastructure and the capacity of our staff and our counseling team to really support the day-to-day operations of our DREAM program, right? This financial commitment at the local level really ensured that we had a consistent, a very visible support system for our undocumented students at Mount SAC. Important to note that, with the use of general funds to support legal services before the statewide initiative, it really kind of allowed us to really understand kind of what was to come, right? To really anticipate some of those challenges that we needed to work through before we could implement some of those best practices. So that was very, very helpful for us. With the specific foundation support, right? So we could see the SEEP funding, right? How it creates the support in the staffing, in the day-to-day operations, the resources that are available to students. And that combined with the use of the general funds and the campus foundation funds, we've really been able to implement some of these ideas that were kind of, we've talked about, we were waiting to kind of see how we could kind of fund them and go through them in practical steps. And then when 1645, was passed and there was funding allocated for it, we already had, a vision of what that could look like, but we were only able to do that because both our commitment to the program and to our students was already secured through SEEP and general funds. We were able to kind of move directly from the ideation, right, part to implementation because we had that infrastructure, that support to implement it, right? So yes, with AB 1645 funds, we hired a program specialist, right, that supports the onboarding of our students, the ongoing support and follow-up, help and support with the admissions and records process, with the financial aid process. But we've also allocated a specific amount of money to cover some of the USCIS application fees. So this is beyond DACA renewal and DACA initial application fees. A lot of the fees that are oftentimes hidden in the legal immigration process, like medical examinations and other application related expenses. So we've ensured that it's beyond the scope of DACA, beyond the context of DACA. We've also secured funds or allocated funds for a fellowship program, right? We really want to be intentional about creating a fellowship program that offers both an income generating opportunity for students that also allows them to grow professionally and develop professionally. A lot of things that are oftentimes exclusive to students who are non-DACA and don't have a work permit or social security number. We've allocated additional money for student conference and travel as well. And also being mindful that some of our undocumented students that are currently enrolled aren't eligible for AB 540 or SB 68 at the moment. But it's very critical that we set aside funds to ensure that they continue to enroll to meet their SB 68 eligibility in the future. So that was very, very intentional, greatly facilitated by the amazing job that was done on the FAQ for these types of funds from both the Chancellor's office and the foundation. So thank you so much for that. That really helped us. And in addition to that, also student assistance and short-term hourly support to ensure that we had the capacity, the staffing to launch these new initiatives that came about from the funding. In particular, with the social workers function as a case management team. How timely is it, right, given our current context in a pandemic, right? But we also realized that undocumented students began to utilize our immigration legal services at a much higher rate because there was a lot of things that were coming up and uncovered, right? A lot of psychological and physical trauma that is directly tied to students' migration journeys and or the circumstances that have enabled them to possibly adjust their status. Things like, you know, the U visa, the Violence Against Women Act, special immigrant juvenile status, right? A lot of things that are being screened for from the legal side, but, you know, we didn't have that ability to have a continuum of care that was very intentional and deliberate about how we were supporting these students. So this is exactly how the social workers function, right? Social workers bring with them an extensive series of, you know, experience, knowledge, training, and a lot of it that we needed, right? That is oftentimes beyond the scope of our legal service professionals and our counseling teams. So, you know, the social workers I already kind of mentioned, right? They coordinate the care between the counseling units. They also are in charge of, you know, referring students, ensuring that there's a referral in place, and hopefully the utilization of those services both on and off campus. They also help to navigate, right, the eligibility criteria for programs and services. Oftentimes, you know, it's unclear or it's not noted whether a service or a program is available or eligible for students that are undocumented, so they help navigate that. They also communicate these crucial updates to our DREAM program staff and our legal service providers so that our service delivery to those students subsequently is informed by that continuum of care that the student is in the process of. So in a nutshell, the social workers have really allowed us to decrease that gap that typically exists between the referral to available resources and services and the actual service utilization by students who need those supports. Looking forward, as Eric mentioned, our request is going to be to have some type of mental health clinician support within the program. And 1645, AB 1645 makes this a possibility in the foreseeable future for us. But again, we are only able to support students in this holistic manner with AB 1645 funds because of the use and commitment of campus general funds and seat funds.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Dario, for sharing your perspective and really going into detail about how you've structured your programs, the investments that you utilize. I really want to highlight two things that we heard from our colleagues at MAP San Antonio. One is that they took an approach that focuses on having holistic services, wraparound supports for undocumented students. And they did this with the recognition that first and foremost, they are your students. They are Mount SAC students, and they deserve and have the right to every service that the campus has and makes available. The other thing I really want to highlight is the fact that they really delved into the language of the budget bill, of the statute that created Student Equity and Achievement, SEEP, and what created 1645, and recognized that the education code is permissive, and it allows room for innovation. It provides limitations and guardrails, but beyond that, it's up to a campus to innovate. And really, that's the focus of our conversation today. So really, thank you for highlighting that and sharing all your great work. So want to move to the next topic because we're not done here. This was a great presentation and we still have more. And so I want to next welcome Dr. Cynthia Mosqueda, faculty coordinator at El Camino College, and Jaime Gallegos, who is an advisor there at El Camino College. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. If we can move to the next slide. So our story at El Camino College really begins in 2016. This was shortly after the election. There was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment at that time. And so we hosted a town hall. I did this in partnership with my colleague, Renee Lozano, who is the Transfer Center coordinator. We really didn't know how many students would end up attending, but to our surprise, we had a little bit over 150 students who attended our town hall. And in that town hall, there was a lot of discussions about ways that El Camino College can do a better job in servicing and providing programming for our undocumented students. And so what I'm going to share with you today are some of the recommendations that not only came out of the town hall, but some recommendations that came a little bit later. So we can move to the next slide. So one of the first recommendations for our campus was to establish an undocumented task force. We currently don't have a Dreamer Center, although that is definitely the goal and it's something that we are working towards. But we knew that we needed to do something and we had to be way more intentional about the type of programming that we provide for our undocumented student population. We were very strategic about who was going to be part of the task force. We wanted to make sure that folks from admissions, financial aid, and outreach were represented. A lot of our students talked to us about their transition from K through 12 into the campus and some of the barriers that were getting in their way. And so we wanted to make sure that anybody who worked with undocumented students or touched undocumented students in one way or another was represented. As you can see from some of the bullet slides, we also have faculty, staff, and administrators who serve on our committee. We recently added our Churla attorney who also attends our task force, and that's just been amazing for our students. So please involve your attorneys if you're a campus that offers legal services. And then of course, our students have been the driving force behind all of the initiatives and the directions that we have gone in specifically at El Camino College. Our task force will meet anytime between 3 to 4 times per the semester, really just depends on the needs, but at the minimum 3 times. And we deal with all kinds of issues. When the CARES Act funding was first released and undocumented students were not part of that, the first thing our undocumented task force did is let's figure out other ways to support undocumented students. Let's figure out what other monies the campus is receiving that we can make sure that undocumented students are still provided with some type of grants. And we were able to do that successfully. And that really came out of all the efforts from the task force. Another benefit that we have seen as a result of having our task force is there's been a lot of partnerships that have come out of it. For example, this week for our Undocumented Action Week, our Career Center is hosting a lot of our workshops for our undocumented student population. I think our career counselor is here today, Leslie Mesa. So I want to acknowledge her. And so we've just had these wonderful partnerships. And I also want to mention, because I do think it's important to mention that we started this with absolutely no funding whatsoever. And so I know there's campuses here today. You don't have a Dreamer Center yet. You may not have a Dreamer Center director, but there are things that you can be doing right now to serve undocumented students, you know, to established an undocumented task force. That's something that can definitely be done Monday, Wednesday at the latest. I think it can get put into place. If you can go to the next slide, please. We do have funding today. I think some of those efforts, early efforts when we didn't have funding, really proved that there was a need to service our undocumented students more intentionally. So today we have equity funding as well as the AB 1645 funding. We have hired 2 adjunct Dreamer counselors to work directly with our students. We do have 1 temporary advisor that also assists with wraparound services. And then recently, as recent as last week, we posted a full-time success coordinator position to oversee our undocumented programming at the college. That position is posted on our website right now. It has a closing date of next Friday. Maybe that candidate is here today in this webinar, who knows? So you can go ahead and move to the next slide. And then another recommendation that students wanted is they wanted us to create a hub where they can access a lot of these services and find them a little bit quicker. And so this is on our undocumented student webpage. A student can go directly onto the webpage, book an appointment if they want to see a CHIRLA attorney. If they just have quick questions and they need to hop into an advising session, they can click on that link where it says meet with a Dreamer advisor. They can also schedule their own counseling appointments. A lot of times when our counselors are meeting with students, you know, they sometimes will get questions about residency or maybe an affidavit. And so there's a close partnership between our advisors, our Dreamer counselors, and our admissions and records. And so they can close the loop for a lot of our students during those appointments. And then next slide. And then the last thing before I hand it over to Jaime is one of the recommendations that we recently implemented came out of the California Community College Dreamers Project. We wanted a better way of really creating a baseline for our undocumented students and how they were performing at the college, you know, whether or not they were being successful. So we did create an undocumented student success dashboard. We can look at everything from retention, persistence, course progression. We can look at the number of degrees and certificates that are awarded. This is password protected. A very small number of people at our institution have access to this dashboard. But it's really helping us to see where we need to put more efforts to make sure that our undocumented students are excelling and succeeding at our institution. Next slide. I'm now going to hand it over to our advisor, Jaime Gallegos, who will talk about our partnerships.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to join all of you today. My name is Jaime Gallegos, and I'm an advisor with the first year experience at El Camino College. My work and experience with undocumented students is something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I've worked with undocumented students in different capacities, even as a student worker, as an undergraduate student at UC Santa Cruz. So go banana slugs, if there's any banana slugs out there. As a reminder, El Camino College does not have a Dreamer Center. And part of the reason that we were invited to talk to you today is because although we don't have a physical undocumented support center, and until this semester we didn't have a dedicated Dreamer counselor or advisor, we did utilize a strong support network or Dream team made up of staff, faculty, administrators from many different areas. But most importantly, we had the voice of our undocumented students. I have the privilege of being one of the ECC Undocu Warrior Club advisors alongside with Dr. Renee Lozano. And it really gives me a good opportunity to listen to what our students are saying. Part of that was the creation of a virtual hub for undocumented students. And one of the biggest requests that we had from our undocumented students was that they really wish that their high school counselors had access to more trainings. So we listened and we adapted our Undocu Ally trainings and offered them to our local high schools and community organizations. We go to the next slide, please. So on your screen, you can see our training agenda. So as we developed our ally trainings for our high school allies, we developed this agenda. And again, it was developed in great part from the voices of our undocumented students. They were always super involved with the entire process. We made sure that we collaborated with our Dream team, which was made up of our admissions registrar, counselors, advisors, a financial aid rep, and support programs like FYE and EOPS. And super importantly, we made sure that we also included a student panel. We made sure that we highlighted something that we felt was very important. And this was part of what our students were requesting. for the local high schools, and that was making sure that we covered the differences between California and federal laws and regulations. And we found that clarifying the difference between DACA, AB 540, the California DREAM Act, really helped our high school allies understand the types of resources that are available to our undocumented students. We were finding that there were still some misconceptions about who could attend, at what cost, and whether or not financial aid was available. And we understand that everyone comes with a different knowledge base. So our goal wasn't to make our allies feel as if they were spreading misinformation, because they in fact weren't spreading any kind of misinformation. But as you know, sometimes being able to explain all of these different policies can really cause confusion. So being able to provide that kind of clarification made a really big difference. At the end of all of our trainings, we made sure that we shared our contact information with all of the attendees so they could easily reach us and ask us any follow-up questions and assistance. We were really trying to establish a partnership with our local high schools. Next slide, please. Awesome. So I wanted to reiterate that it was our students that really encouraged our task force to provide training for all our high school counselors. As of now, we've trained over 170 counselors and folks from community resources such as the Boys and Girls Club and one of our local LGBTQIA plus centers. We used Immigrants Rising Amazing Handbook. And what we did was added ECC specific resources. We printed them, we distributed them to all of our attendees so they could also share that as a resource for anyone else who maybe wasn't able to attend one of our ally trainings. Our training really allowed us to see that the two biggest issues that counselors at the high school wanted training on were admissions and financial aid. One of the biggest things that we took out of these trainings was also the creation of a K12 listserv of high school counselors that we could update on any changes, as well as any follow-up items, and be able to provide additional outreach. For example, our new Dreamer advisor and counselor are actually utilizing that listserv now to offer high school presentations for incoming students. So we're already starting to see the benefits of that partnership by them requesting different presentations now. Next slide, please. So how do we even establish this K12 partnership to have been able to train over 100 counselors? ECC offers a yearly counselor collaborative to our local high schools, where different programs and services present to highlight what ECC has to offer their students. It's a really great way to update the high school counselors on some of our new processes, and really helps with closing the loop on connecting students to the resources that might benefit them as first-year college students. We also have a really strong and close relationship to our outreach and school relations team, which is instrumental to being able to build these partnerships. We have a super strong partnership. They're truly an amazing team, and they've really helped us with making sure that we're taking care of our students. I think there's one more slide. So I hope that we're a testament to those of you who don't have a Dream Center. You can see that you can still get started and you can get a lot of accomplished. Our key ingredient thing has been making sure that we stay connected to our students and having them be part of our planning with our task force. Our students are truly amazing and continue to push us to be better educators and advocates. I just want to say thank you to all of you for tuning in and hearing what we have been up to at ECC. And I believe I'm going to turn it over to Lisette.
Thank you, Jaime. I just want to highlight a couple of great things that we heard. So thank you, first of all, for a great presentation and for showing how you can integrate all of these supports into the ethos of the campus so that it's part of the fabric of who you are and how you welcome students from day one. A couple of key highlights from what El Camino College is doing. They're not only ensuring that they're connecting students to supports, providing legal services, providing trainings, but they're hearing from students and looping back to where they can support students even earlier by providing trainings at the K12 level. So another great example of ways that you can use your local resources to support our undocumented students. So I have the privilege of closing the loop and highlighting some of the other things that we've heard. So one is that our colleges are leveraging their student equity and achievement funds, grading funds, And then thinking about campus supports, both institutional or instructional and student supports. They're really taking an intentional effort at connecting our students, our undocumented students, to DACA, CADA, and other financial resources and guidance. And that guidance is also being provided to counselors as early as a K12 level so that they can advise them early and often. You've heard models around dream resource liaisons or ways that you can integrate that concept across the campus. And again, the breadth of legal services that can be provided and the supports that help move that step along for our students. So again, really want to thank you all for taking that approach. I also want to remind us that at the state level, we've already made a very intentional effort in supporting our undocumented students. The Student Center funding formula includes undocumented students, AB 540 students as part of the supplement grant. It's part of the fabric of your funding and resources. So again, it matters. And so we've put it where in a way that you can track and leverage these resources. So I want to turn next, the last few minutes that we have on some of the questions that we've seen in the Q&A. So we'll, I'm going to highlight a couple that came up, and I know that one was shared. I think Eric, you answered a really great one, which is how do you build support from the Board of Trustees level? Do you want to talk a little bit about your answer?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. What I had answered is from the beginning, the president and our vice president of student services have always shown support. And they've always talked about dream students. They've talked about our foster youth, our Pride Center, our veterans. It's just a point of discussion across the campus. It has always been a point of discussion. It's something that we don't hide. And that obviously trickles up to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees at board meetings, at President's Cabinet, our vice president talks about our data, talks about our success stories. They get invited and they show up. They show up to our events, to all of our activities. So they are also very, very supportive of the program.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting, and hopefully that provides an example of how you can engage your elected leadership, as Eric mentioned, including them, showing the efforts are being done is one way to do it. Another question we've gotten a few times is what does SEEP stands for? We love jargon in education. So it's student equity and achievement. And if you add the program to it, and that's how we create SEEP, you'll often also hear it called C funds. So just wanted to highlight that there are resources that it's one of the largest categorical programs that California community colleges receive. So I want to see if any of our colleagues have other questions that they answered that they maybe want to elevate in the last minute that we have today. All right. Well, thank you. I now want to turn it to Assistant Vice Chancellor Linda Vasquez to close us out. Thank you for a great webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Navarrete, and please join me in a virtual round of applause to all of our presenters, our fearless keynote, Leonardo Rodriguez, our campus leaders, and of course also and President Nguyen for sharing her story. And also powerful words about the role that campuses play in providing safe, welcoming spaces for our students. If you can just cue up the last slide, for those of you who are still holding on to the last few seconds, it's not over. We are midway to our Undoc Action Week webinars. And I know that as we're hosting these conversations, there are campuses up and down the state, probably many of you on this call, who are hosting their own events. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., we are hosting our 4th webinar of the week, effectively using data in a complex environment. We have a lot of amazing speakers lined up, equally impressive and amazing as our speakers from today. I won't read all of them, but if you have not already registered, well, actually, you would be registered if you joined us today. Don't forget to join us tomorrow. Tell your colleagues, tell your friends, your compadres, your comadres, everyone to join us. You don't want to miss this critical conversation. I know we had this question a lot in the chat. Will a copy of the PowerPoint be available? Will a copy of this presentation be available? A copy of the recording will be available on our website. I dropped a link in the chat. We won't be able to share the actual decks by themselves. You'll get a copy of that through the recording, but I did drop my email for those of you who want to follow up one-on-one. Again, thank you for joining us. A big round of applause for our participants. Really thank you for lending your time and expertise in addressing this critical topic. Have a wonderful day, everyone.